Everybody, and welcome to Observing with Webb, where a high school astronomy teacher shows you what you're looking at, why it's so cool, and what you should check out later this month at night. Don't forget to check out my Podbean page. That's podbean.com/mrwebb.podbean.com. My YouTube channel and my Twitter feed, both with the username MrWebbPV. And you can also get this as a podcast on Stitcher and iTunes. So November, it brings us some earlier nights. We've got all the naked eye planets that are visible at some point near dusk or dawn. And we also have a couple of close encounters between the planets. And you might even catch some Leonid meteors or even a lineup of Venus, Jupiter, and Mars in the mornings. The planets we can see with our naked eye. If you take a look toward the west or southwest, after sunset, right now I have it on for November 1st. Sunset is right at about 6 p.m. Oh, wait, let's take daylight savings time off since most of the month we're off of that. It sets at about 5 p.m. And if you wait until about, let's go with 6 p.m., that's a good time after dinner, you get out there and you take a look. Now, over in the southwest, you will see Saturn out there. Saturn's not going to be out for too long. In fact, it's only about 10 degrees above the horizon, and it sets around 7:30 Eastern Standard Time in the beginning of the month, and pretty much just after sunset by the end of the month. But Saturn's going to be up there. It'll be the brightest object in that region over there in the southwest. Not too high. In fact, here we've got it at 14 degrees above the horizon right at the beginning of the month. And if we move forward through the month, you'll notice that Saturn gets lower and lower throughout the month. Okay, so that's what we got over there. Now, before I move on, you can see Mercury toward the last week. Let me go back to sunset, and let me go to November 25th. You'll see that Saturn and Mercury are actually pretty close to each other on the 25th. And let me back up just a little bit. There we go. You notice that Mercury, now you can't see this during the daytime because Mercury is pretty low there, even at sunset. But let me fast forward. You notice that Mercury gets higher and higher every day, and you might just be able to catch it by the 24th. And then after the 24th, by December 1st, it is going down below the horizon again. So if you want to catch Mercury, that last week of November is your chance to do it. Just make sure that you bring binoculars out. I'm thinking somewhere around the 26th of November would be your best chance because it's high in the sky compared to what it can be, and Saturn is right nearby as well. So if we back away and look at the entire night sky throughout the night, in fact, let's go back to November 15th, you'll notice that there's really not much out there. Yes, Neptune is there, but you need a telescope. Uranus is there, but you need a telescope. So let's start looking toward the east, where new planets or stars are rising throughout the night. You can see Orion, you can see Gemini, you can see Cancer, Leo, not much. Oh, there we go, there's Mars. If you want to find Mars, you want to get out there after 4 a.m. to catch Mars. Now, it's not too bright, but you can see it. It's definitely red, and it's definitely one of the only red things in the area. Also, if you can find Spica right here, that's a very bright star. It's right below Mars. So if you can find a bright star and a red thing above it, that red thing is Mars. Now you also notice that, the sun's starting to rise, and there's Jupiter and Venus. Now Jupiter and Venus are low on the horizon. So let's take a look and see what happens throughout the month with these three planets. So if we're looking at November 1st, you'll notice that as the days go by, Venus gets lower and lower in the sky. You may have noticed that in the mornings when you're driving, that Venus gets lower and lower, and it's going to be not visible by about mid-November. And you'll notice that Jupiter's rising up, and they actually meet. I'm going to get to this later. They actually meet on November 13th, where they're like less than a quarter of a degree apart, but we'll talk about that later. I'm talking in general here. But you notice that Jupiter kind of takes over Venus, and they switch places. And then by the end of the month, Jupiter is now going up toward Mars, and November 30th, you've got Jupiter and Mars pretty easily visible in the morning sky. And Venus, well, Venus is just too close to the sun. We won't be able to see it by the month's end. So again, end of the month, you've got Jupiter and Mars, but the beginning of the month, it's Venus and Mars. They essentially switch places.
And a bunch of other stuff.
So what other stuff do we have going on? Well, the full moon is on the 4th of November, which means the moon will rise just as the sun is setting, and it will be visible the entire night and light up the world around you. On the 5th is when daylight savings time ends, and we go back to the earlier nights. Everything gets dark an hour earlier. And, well, let's see. Let's look at this full moon real quick. Let's look at about midnight when it's just about highest in the sky. And what you'll notice is over the next couple nights, it gets lower in the sky, passes Orion, passes Gemini, and then on the 10th is when we have the last quarter moon. That's when the left half is lit up, and it's visible from midnight and into the morning. And then what happens? Well, let's see. We know the track that the moon generally traces. Let me move to about 5 in the morning, and you'll notice that day after day, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, you'll notice that the moon gets closer and closer to Mars. Before we do that, I forgot something. This is post-editing here. On the morning of the 13th, get out there after 6 a.m. And look east-southeast toward the horizon, very low on the horizon, and you'll see Jupiter and Venus down there. Now, the reason I missed this was because they looked pretty far apart. But if we start zooming in, what we notice is that Venus and Jupiter are actually really close together. And what you'll be able to see is Venus and Jupiter all together in one eyepiece of a telescope, which would just be absolutely beautiful to see. Now, if you focus in on Venus, you'll notice it's in its gibbous but very bright phase, almost full. Jupiter, you'll be able to see the cloud bands, and you'll be able to see all 4 moons, Ganymede, Io, Europa, and Callisto as well, all in one eyepiece. In fact, right now I just put up a 30 arc minutes. That's half of a degree of arc. So if your telescope can get down to this, which a lot of them can, most of them do, you will be able to get Venus and Jupiter all in one shot, which would just be a phenomenal picture. And then on the 14th is when some of the fun stuff starts happening in the mornings. On the 14th, you'll notice, let me zoom in a little bit, that you've got the moon, Mars, and then Jupiter and Venus down here. So you can see 4 really good celestial objects in the morning. Then on the 15th, the moon is now on the other side of Mars. It's a very thin crescent, pretty easily seeable, and Mars is over here. Also, when you go out and look at this, see if you can see the Earth shine. See if you can see the dark side of the moon reflecting the light from the Earth. But anyway, you know that the moon keeps traveling and getting thinner and thinner. And so on the 16th, the moon, Jupiter, and Venus make this pretty cool line here. And it should make Jupiter and Venus easy to find if you're using the moon, like get to the right size, as your reference point. Okay? And then, if you go one more day, this is the tough one. On the 17th of November, just before the sun rises, the very, very, very thin moon will be next to Venus with Jupiter above. This will be hard to do. Or hard to see because the moon is so very thin and it's dawn, so it's really hard to see these planets because the dawn is overtaking the darkness. So let's back away and talk about another thing on the 17th, also in the morning. See this big constellation Leo? That has some meteors coming from there, meaning that the radiant of the Leonids is in Leo. What I've read about in Sky and Telescope is that this meteor shower used to be really good, even 10, 15, 20 years ago, but it's kind of fading. And I guess we're just not hitting as much of the debris from the comet that it was from as we used to. So Leo, you might see about 15 meteors per hour coming from Leo. Shouldn't be great, but it's a new moon the next day on the 18th. And because the 18th is a new moon, you have really good skies in the morning, even the days before that, to see some of these Leonids. The new moon, again, is on the 18th, and on the 20th, well, wait, where's the moon? Well, we got to go and look at sunset and look to the west where the sun sets, or southwest, and take a look. You can actually see the moon, Mercury, and Saturn kind of all together. Okay? So on the 20th, Mercury will be down here, moon will be up here, Saturn right next to it. Now, you might have to wait a little bit, maybe 5:30, but then it's going to be very close to the horizon, so you need a very good horizon to look at here. Now, Thanksgiving, that's actually a pretty good time this year. You might be able to catch Mercury. You should be able to catch Saturn, although it's low. You'll have a nice crescent moon to look at, and if you wait until the morning, the next morning, I know some of you hunters are out there, getting up real early on Friday, or Black Friday shoppers, if you're out there and you are out there before the sun rises on the 24th, you can see Mars rising up with Jupiter and maybe Venus just at the time where the sun rises there. So that's a good Thanksgiving. I'm kind of excited for it. So let me go back to the, let me go forward to the 26th, and let's look again at sunset in the west. And what you'll notice is, oh, there's the first quarter moon. The right half is lit up. And if we go forward just 2 more days, you'll notice that, oops, Saturn and Mercury are actually pretty close together. It doesn't look that close on here, but really they are only about 3 degrees apart, but they're very low in the horizon. If you want to see these, you should probably bring binoculars.
Are there patterns in our skies? Are patterns only in our eyes?
So what about the constellations that you can see for November? Well, here we go. Let's talk about 6 o'clock and let's see what's out there. Now, if we look toward the west, you'll see that there are still some summer constellations out there. They actually tend to last a little longer because the sun sets earlier and earlier. But you can see Cygnus the Swan up here. You can also see Aquila the Eagle and Lyra the Harp. And these 3 make the summer triangle, or at least the brightest stars in those 3 constellations make up the summer triangle. You also have Delphinus over here. And what you'll notice is that these actually set over there in the west eventually. Now, luckily, they won't set until, oh, wow, well, Aquila actually won't set until about 9:30. Okay, but let's go back to 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Maybe that's when you actually get a chance to go outside. And let's say you look to the south, or at least kind of straight up, you'll be able to see Pegasus and Andromeda. Okay, you can see Pegasus is this nice big square. You've got the Andromeda galaxy over here. Andromeda's over here. This is just really neat to see these curves that happen right about here. And then Cassiopeia is over here. Now, the little right angle, or almost right angle here, points almost perfectly to the Andromeda galaxy over here. Pretty much. And also here with Pegasus and Andromeda, if you look at the curves of Andromeda, take the second pair of stars, line them up, and right in that direction is the Andromeda galaxy, about the same distance away. That's the way that I like to find it. Okay. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty neat. And real quick, if you're looking out in the morning, I find the morning is a very good time to look out. You can find, let's say you're waking up and let's say it's before you go to work. So let's say, well, not 5:45. Let's go with about 5 in the morning. If you look to the south, whoops. If you look to the southwest, you can see Orion, the great bow tie in the sky, very visible. You can see Gemini above him, Auriga also above him, Canis Major with the brightest star in the sky, Sirius, right there. Okay. And you can also see some of the spring constellations actually starting here. Leo is coming in, and so is Cancer. That's pretty much it for the constellations. Again, I would suggest looking at the summer triangle, Pegasus, Andromeda, and Cassiopeia. And if you're in a very dark place, one last thing, if you're in a dark place, let me go back to, let's say, 9 p.m. and you're in a dark place, you might actually see Cygnus out there in the west, and you can actually sort of see this Milky Way going across the sky. If you look at the AALC Facebook page, I put some pictures up there from the October sky watch that you can actually just barely make out the galaxy going across the sky, and that's a really neat one to find. And that's it for the month of November. I hope you get out there and maybe see a Leonid and check out Saturn, maybe Mercury, definitely Mars, maybe Venus and Jupiter. So enjoy your month and get out there and take a look at the sky. I wish you very clear, dark skies for the month of November.